Welcome to the Fraudcast, everybody. It's Wednesday. I'm so happy you're here. We got 13 folks in. More people are trickling in. Jenna always gives a nice, fancy, lead into what we do here. If this is your first time, I want to introduce you to some new friends, and that's pretty much everyone that you see in these boxes around us. This is a nice group where we get together every week and talk about what's going on in our world. We spent a lot of time lately, especially in the last few weeks, talking about AI. I had a frog in my throat when I said AI, and I think that was a poetic lilt there, I might say, because there's so much changing in our world around AI. I wanted to zoom out a little bit today on this 4th of July impending weekend, as we're all about to, fire up the grill and open up the coolers, if you know what I mean, and maybe dip our toes into some kiddie pools, et cetera, et cetera. I want to talk about where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going in this fraud world. And when I say I want to talk about that, I really want to hear from you mostly. So without further ado, let me fire up the old grill here myself. By the way, if you haven't taken the opportunity yet, go ahead and throw a message in the chat about who you are, where you're at. If you want to toss a little LinkedIn in there as well, it keeps us all kind of simpatico. Before we get into this too, I'm going to warn you, we're going to talk a lot about Dutch painting from the 16th century. I know that's why you came here today, to hear about these great Dutch painters. There's going to be a little Beatles talk. I think Leonard Cohen comes up at one point. Oh, and David Bowie. So, take that as you will. It is a long and winding road, my friends. It has definitely been a long and winding. I'm not calling anybody old here. I'm feeling old sometimes. Maybe sometimes I feel spry, but it's certainly been a long and winding road for any of us who've spent any amount of time, even if you've only been in the fraud space for the last 6 months or so. So much has changed, and there's so much going on that when you look back to your salad days as a upstart analyst and you look at yourself now, you're kind of left saying, jeepers, I can't believe we did things that way. We've spent so much time together. And by the way, I'm going to stop sharing here because I want to make sure I've let everyone in. I have certainly let everyone in. We've spent so much time together in the last, I don't know, several months at least, that you maybe don't know my whole long and winding road story. So I wanted to lead off and embarrass myself first before I ask anyone else to talk about their long and winding road story. So here it is. I was born on a cold winter's day in Secaucus, New Jersey, little place in the middle of nowhere. There's my grandfather right here. He used to say Secaucus was 10 pounds of manure in a 5-pound bag. So that's the kind of place that I grew up in. And I guess I've always been lurking in this world. You can kind of see me right here in the distance. And if we enhance a little bit, yep, there it is. So it's kind of been, I don't think much has changed in 3+ decades. And Justin, as you can see, I am a man of my word. I've been cursed with this team since day one. So, it's a birth defect, I guess. So there's my excuse for all of it. But what did I do? I went to the most prestigious schools on earth, right? I went to Harvard on the Hill over here. I went to Rutgers in New Jersey, and I doubled down and went to Appalachian State. I studied English. I loved literature, but I wasn't really much of a student outside of that world. In fact, I found this picture floating around of me during my college days. And there you go. This is the scholar himself right here. I probably spent more time doing that than I did everything else. Lo and behold, I somehow wound up 10 years ago working for the Denver Police Department. While I was at the Denver Police Department as a crime scene investigator, I had the opportunity to take some training from the FBI, a little mom and pop shop called the FBI, around information security and best practices. I said, geez, this is kind of cool. There's so much awful stuff going on the internet, and that at a tune, dollars and cents wise, that is just drastically different than anything we'd see on the streets. One of my favorite things that I saw at the Denver Police Department, I'm going to share with you, because I know many of you are going through like returns issues and returns challenges. This wasn't about returns, but they arrested a gentleman who was outside of a Home Depot who was selling iPads. The boxes looked like iPads, but when people would give the money, and they would go and open up that box. They found a bathroom tile that was the same exact size as the iPads. That's like an early rock in a box scheme that I kind of saw on the streets over there. It was pretty cool. I bounced around. I cut my teeth at Shutterstock, Open Table, and now here I am at Signified for the last 4 years in the e-commerce fraud space, and a lot of different things seen there. And I think when I go to the old school mentality and like how I got into the fraud game, I would say it was through sheer luck. If I could plug anybody right now, I got to plug Ashley Newman at Open Table, who found me and said, "You want to do fraud? I heard you were in law enforcement." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds pretty cool." But I'm sure we all have our own stories about how we got into this game, who gave us our first break, and maybe you were a scholar just like me, sitting out there on the student mall and playing Pearl Jam while smoking on a Marlboro. So please, who among us, show of hands, and please come off mute and tell us about this. Who among us went to school for this, got a formal degree for this? Uh, Maybe perhaps wasn't even, if you've read Billy Budd by Herman Melville, I feel like sometimes I was conscripted into this for my past transgressions. Does anybody else feel similarly? I mean, I would love to hear how you got cracking in this world. Jessica, I don't want to pick on you, but I would love to hear how you got into this game, because when I think about a fraud professional, and I have love for everybody who's been on the show, I think about a fraud professional, a dyed-in-the-wool fraud professional. Think about you. How did you get started?
You. So I started my world of customer service and working call centers. And so I remember one of my first calls at a call center. It was for, I don't know if I could say names, but T-Mobile. And we have to add lines to accounts when people call in. And there was just one that was just weird. It was strange. This was like my first time ever really dealing with something that I knew was fraud. And my manager at the time was like, well, your job's to pretty much just like set up new lines of service. And it just didn't sit well with me. And then fast forward like 5 years later, I ended up joining Murdoch's Ranch and Home Supply as a customer service representative, answering phone calls. But that's kind of always like was in the back of my mind, like, oh, that was kind of strange. And like, it was just a natural thing of me just being able to identify it. And within Murdoch's, we rolled out a fraud verification tool. And it was to help us review online orders, but also it helped our system be able to auto approve orders, because at that time we'd have to go into each individual order and hit approve to have it sent to the warehouse. And so there was nobody to man it. And I just kind of was like, I love this. It's interesting. Like, started researching it, started teaching myself as much as I could with that. And I've been in, and so they kind of put me as a title of customer service / fraud analyst. Then they changed my title to loss prevention specialist. So it's kind of been the same role, but it's just changed and evolved from customer service to now being in our finance group, looking at internal controls, along with online order review, along with anything else fraud related. They'll just be like, oh, send it to Jessica, see what she could find out. And so I've been doing that for, it'll be, I think 12 or 13 years. And I think it's 12 years in September. And so it's just me just learning and learning and building and building. And customer service, I think, is a great foundation, because you talk to customers, you get to know them. And once you know your customer, you kind of know who's not your customer. And so that's how I got started. But yeah.
Amazing. I'm curious about something, because you mentioned, oh, ask Jessica, throw it to Jessica. Like it's you maybe have your own Jira board and it's just Jessica, how does, in 12 years of doing that, what is it? I know there's the sweet with the sour,
Yeah.
I'm wondering what both of those look like, though, because I'm sure it gets heavy, but I'm also sure it fills you with a little bit of joy.
Yeah.
Why do you think it fills you with joy, and how does it get heavy?
So I think the biggest joy, I think, is being able to know that I'm doing something to help somebody somewhere. A lot of the times I'm able to talk to customers, or if I found somebody's defrauded, Sometimes they'll use the real telephone number, like the fraudster will use the actual cardholder's number, and I'm able to talk to them. Sometimes it's a little bit more research and I can find the numbers. And so talking to that person and they're like, you're the first person that's called me. My bank didn't even call me, thank you so much. And just that, like, I guess relief, because I know if it was me, I don't know what I would do if I was defrauded, because unfortunately the downside of this and being with a company for kind of 12 years is pay is not always the best. And so I hear that if you change companies every 2 to 3 years, usually you'll be making more money than if you stayed loyal to a company for 12 years. So I think that's the downside of it. But I mean, I do have a great, like, our company is a great company. It's a great culture. And so it kind of having a good team and having people, and one, just learning as much as I can. And because it's kind of something I didn't really create it, like fraud is fraud, but having a position that's been created or that I'm able to have all hands in, it's really nice because I can learn what I need to learn to protect our company in like real time. So it's not like I'm it's not like I have set rules, which is also a downside because expectations are always key in anything. But I'm also able to kind of roll with where I need to go. So like this year, I've gotten more into loss prevention at the store level. So trying to stop bad actors at the stores, researching chargebacks and understanding how that is, and being more hands-on at the store. We do ship from our store and everything, and so I've always had that little piece of it. But being able to be more hands-on with stores and learning about it, researching videos, seeing what these people look like, because for the last, I'd say for the first 10 years, it was just all digital. So it wasn't really knowing anything except what I can see online and through a fraud verification tool to see, oh yeah, this is what's happening. So I think the biggest thing is for me that keeps me going is knowing that I'm at least making a difference for one person out there, and making their life maybe a little bit easier to stop fraud earlier than being 10 transactions, thousands of dollars in the hole, and then having to dispute that.
Tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here, and then I'll let you off the hot seat, which is
Oh, it's totally fine.
very much a cool throne for you right now. Tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here, because when I hear about the things that give you joy and get you excited, I hear a lot about the artist's perspective on the world in many ways. An artist to me is someone who is almost overly empathetic and like can easily put themselves in other people's shoes and feels pain from being able to do that so much. I think the artist also wants to see the unseen. They say to F the ineffable, to conjure that which is just in the realm of the imagination. I hear that from you about, I'm in this digital space. The buyer is invisible and I want to know more about them and I want to put the detail around them and get the color. Were you, there's the word, were you inclined toward the arts as a child? Are you still inclined toward the arts at all? Am I barking up the wrong tree to call you an artist?
I mean, I definitely love artistic things. I don't know if I'm very artistic in the way of, like, for instance, I think it was last Christmas, me and my son, for our Christmas gift to each other, was going to a paint and sip and painting each other pictures, and that was like a Christmas present. So there is that artist part of me. There is that idea of creation, of just creating something, I think is always neat. And I think you're definitely not barking up the wrong tree, but I don't know if I'd really call myself an artist.
Well, you just got labeled that today. So
Well,
thank you for sharing. That's amazing. And you know what? You segued us so well into art. What better artist to get us into all forms of art? Because fraud, in many ways, is a dark art. Fraud prevention itself is some sort of art, right? Then Mr. David Bowie, right? Changes, my friend. Turn and face the strange changes. And I think when we go back and we think about where we've come from, especially 12 years, 10 years, however long anyone's been in the game, I was reminded of this painting by Peter Bruegel the Elder, dropped when I was a young man in 1560 here. And this painting, if you kind of squint and put your nose on the screen, you could see what's going on. This was the artist talking about all the kind of pastimes that the kids would play. I mean, you could see them down here rolling hoops with a stick, for those of you who have children, or for any of us who have observed children over the last, I don't know, 40 or 50 years, not much of the old hoop and stick game going on anymore. It may be, I dare say, a bit passe. So when I was thinking about what's changed in our world, Jessica, you brought up my first point, the Q life. I feel like when I started in the fraud space, it was just get into the physical office. I see many of you in your home digs. Get into the physical office, make that small talk with people who aren't doing anything that is remotely close to what we do. Headphones on, coffee injected, and then just like 500 orders, like bang them out. Go, 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 go. And that's definitely changed a lot through the different policies and rules and machine learning scenarios that we've got nowadays. But it still rears its head every now and then. I'm thinking like holiday seasons and all that kind of stuff. There might even still be some veracity in that Q life. I'd love to talk about that. Another big thing that I've seen, and I'm going to be curious to hear from y'all about this, is the rise in consumer privacy consciousness. I think when I started 10 years ago, I was more likely, on the aggregate, to see somebody using an email address that was their name at gmail.com. We still see that today, of course. It's still plenty, popular, but I see a lot more people kind of, using burner accounts just to do this kind of stuff, or tumbling their email through Gmail's like plus edition or period edition to, show that they're shopping here and not there, et cetera, to track where they're getting their spam from. I feel like more people are on VPNs. I feel like VPNs used to be this kind of dark art thing, but now folks like my dad are on them, and he's a plumber. He's not a tech guy. He's got no reason to be there, So I've seen a shift there. And then finally, this is the hill that I die on, and this might show my hand about where I'm at in the cool hip kind of feeling. I think we've entered an era where people are a little more apt to engage in what we would have traditionally called frictive moments, step up, 2FA, MFA. In fact, I argue, and I got into this argument and a lot of people were against me on it, I sometimes feel a little better, a little more secure, a little confidence check when I 2FA into something, saying, okay, I don't feel so bad about putting my credit card in here. You got to jump through various hoops, and I don't want people to not jump through hoops to get my credit card. Stuff like that. So I'm wondering, for all of us who've been in this game for either 6 months or even, God forbid, 6 decades, what's changed in the fraud world from your vantage point? How have you seen this game shift a little bit? It could be from the things you do, at your own computer, to the things that people are trying to do to you from computers, or things that are made to look like computers that aren't actually computers. Would love to hear from you as I take a sip of this beautiful water that I've got here.
Interesting one for you, Vito. Kind of from the weird consumer perspective, but just kind of listening to conversations, you don't hear as much about people talking about big corporations as a scam, or how they're doing things as a scam. You definitely hear more about the opportunism, or hey, there's this glitch, or hey, there's this thing. Like, it's almost like a paradigm shift from for me to what about me? You know what I mean?
That's fantastic. My head went. I wonder where your head goes immediately with that, because my head immediately went to that was it Bank of America, or one of these banks had the ATM glitch, which was just check fraud, but like, it's almost like, dude, did you know you could do this? And like, instead of, yeah, like, this has been around for a while. It's like, if you just go into the store, you could take whatever you want. Like, no one's there to stop you. Isn't this crazy? Where did your head go for? Was it the bank glitch?
Yeah, that was the one, the ATM glitch, or the unfortunate endless cash app glitch that I read about every other day. Just kind of those things where it's like, shame on big corporation, how dare you to, hey, here's how we can screw them over. Everyone get in on this. It's like, it's just weird how that paradigm shift has taken place.
You're segueing me so well. That sounds weird, but this is a great segue to what is coming up next. I'm going to hold the segue, because it's almost like the proliferation of information is not always a great thing, but it's the thing we need, but it's also the thing that hurts us. It is that recursive snake eating its tail Ouroboros moment. We're going to talk a lot about that in particular. I think a lot of us here have been affected by Reddit and different posts on Reddit about what you can do around our returns or what you can do around the heavy stuff we ship or the light stuff we ship or the colored things that aren't the right color and et cetera and so on. So I love that. I mean, that is such a huge paradigm shift. I'm no longer a criminal. I am just opportunistic. Is anyone else getting the heebie-jeebies from that? Is it just me?
It's definitely an opportunistic environment I've noticed over the years for sure. We had, just recently, Justin called out promo codes, and that's one reason I called a customer and like he was taking advantage of a 10% off coupon, shopping cart abandonment, but he's like, I thought I was just being a savvy shopper. And I'm like, you've like saved thousands of dollars over the last like months, like probably what, 6 months, and yet you're just being a savvy shopper, and then he's taking it and reselling it. So I think that is a huge thing. I've noticed that it's changed, and then that creates the whole world of like bots, and then how they can try to jump in and see what your glitches are so that they can try to take advantage. It's just that's gotten way bigger than what I knew about or started with. So I think that's key.
It plays with the empathy a little bit too, not in terms of turning into antipathy toward the buyer, but in your practice of empathizing, you need to put on your criminal cap a little bit too. And if we're in this world where there's bot-driven acquisition of promo codes, you need to embrace the bot, become the bot, be the bot. It's just kind of wild. Justin, you never need to raise your hand in this room. What is this? Do I have my bow tie on today or something?
Sorry. I got a little story to share, and I'll bring it back home if it sounds like it's coming from left field. But about 15 years ago, I was living in an apartment complex where there was specific, assigned numbered stalls for the parking. And one night I'm coming back late. I think I was on the phone and I was pulling into my spot, park, go inside for the night. The next morning I go out to my car, it's not there. And I'm looking around, and after a little bit of analyzing what may have happened, I realized I probably had parked in my neighbor's spot. And I go up to the neighbors, and knock on the door. They let me in. And eventually these guys ended up becoming really good friends of mine. But the story was that, yes, indeed, I had not paid attention and I had parked in the neighbor's spot. And they didn't really know me yet. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know my car. And ultimately it was my mistake, but I talked to him. I said, man, I would have loved to knock on the door or someone to reach out to me, because they basically took action and had me towed, because at the time I was just a blank head, right? I wasn't a person with feelings and emotions and stuff like that. And when I get on the phone sometimes with these, I don't know, maybe more friendly fraud customers who are, once again, either taking advantage of promo codes or doing something where it's like, okay, I know this is them. It's not some, a dark, misty shadow removed with a bunch of anonymity. I will always take the opportunity and say, hey, look, despite what you might think based on some, online presence, and maybe you see a lot of ads, I say, we are a small company and we are real people. And when you do this stuff, like, it hurts us, right? It's in essence, it's stealing from us, and it's making it worse, not just on us who, own the company or who are a part of the company, but also really all the other consumers, because eventually, that might drive up prices, or it might change policies or stuff like that. And so many times when I do that, there will be that kind of like oh yeah, I guess that's right moment with these customers on the other end. And I wish there was a better way to get that out to the world, that, kind of like Ryan was saying at the beginning, it's like these are not just big faceless corporations where, there's no harm done when you're doing this. It's like everybody gets affected, whether it's, the workers, the owners, the other consumers. It all trickles down eventually.
Amazing, because it's like stealing from your local supermarket. You're just kind of, shooting yourself in the foot there a little bit as well. How does it swing? Like, I think everything, as I'm this armchair historian, everything kind of swings back and forth in this pendulum manner. We want that. Jessica's saying, she agrees with you. We need to educate, like you're saying, we need to educate consumers about this. Does the pendulum swing back in a authoritative kind of role that is just as off-putting? Like, do we finally throw our hands up and say enough is enough? You have to get with it or not. Therefore, I want you to really verify who you are. I need like a reference for you to come and shop with me. Where do you see this going? I mean, can you educate? I know it's like a call by call thing. Is it just the times we live in? Where's the faith, I think, from this group? I'd love to hear that. Like, what kind of faith do you have in Joe Q consumer for changing that attitude, right? Changing that.
Are people willing to be educated though? Like if you just look at any topic today, it's so easy to put yourself in a vacuum and live your life through your own digital tunnel vision. And so it's like, are people capable of being educated about this? I think is the big question for me. And will they take the step to learn and implement what they learn?
Yeah, it's just noise otherwise, right? It's just not listening, earmuffs.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Vito, for what it's worth, you know, I've been doing this a minute, and over the years of doing this, like, I can't control people's intentions. I can't control what knowledge they have or lack of knowledge. I can't control that. So where I typically go is a lot of times it's what the credit card companies are driving for me, right? So if the credit card companies are saying, "Hey, this is an issue," and then we're going to hit you with it as the business, those are really what drives me to make the decisions that we make, so that we can protect ourselves from penalties or just from losses in general as they come. And that's been one of those things that, for lack of a better way of putting it, the more black and white you can make it and pull out subjectivity, the easier it is to communicate with legit and non-legit customers. Because, if you're telling them, "Hey, this is the way it is, this is the law, this is the way the credit card companies have it set up, et cetera," you're not being subjective at that point. You're not targeting somebody because you think they're a bad person, whatever it may be. So I think for me, I try to make this as objective as possible in this world that we're in, and just leave it that way, because I can't control a lot of the other things that come with it.
That's such a position of power right there. That's like a powerful thing, because it is that empathetic move. Like, we're in this together, me from my position in the company, you as the buyer, we're all under the credit card, we're all under the bank. So like, these are just the rules we need to play by, and that's a nice way to frame it. I like that a lot. Has anyone else been able to find that degree of pragmatism in approaching those tough conversations at all? If not, Matthew's very willing to share. I know he is. So please reach out to our friend Matthew here. I want to go back to the art real quick, because you teed it up. Y'all teed it up so well. How do I share my screen again? Without Jenna here, I am lost, my friends, in many ways. Here we go. Okay, boom. All right. No, that's the wrong boom. Here's the right boom. All right. Bing, bang, bong. Okay, cool. The Future. There's a great Leonard Cohen song, The Future, and I'm going to spare you the impression. I'm not going to do Leonard Cohen for you right now. Bruegel also painted this one. Okay, this one, it might be the one you're familiar with. 1562, a mere 2 years after painting that delicate little kids game painting, he paints The Triumph of Death. I'll spare you the zoom into this one. It's quite brutal, but this was this was painted not too long after the advent of the Gutenberg printing press, the Gutenberg Bible, the technological upheaval of its time, where all of a sudden anybody can get words on a page in which authority was carried. Before that, the page or the printed word was something truly reserved for the monastic class, the priestly class, the ecclesiastical class, something that was beyond us mere mortals. Our stories needed to be sung or rhymed or told at the bar, but now they were on paper. There's a lot of terror around that. If anyone can tell their story, if anyone can write anything down, then what happens next? I think the things we're talking about in regards to the spicy bits of information that come out, the hacks, the glitches that come out are result of this period of time with the accessibility that came with the printed word. So I think about what's coming next. We're in the middle of our own revolution here. Our own Gutenberg revolution is here. We've talked about it in the last 2 episodes in regards to agentic commerce. I think these are the 3 areas where we need to really think that, are we keen to change? Are we ready to change? First one, omni-channel Uber alles. Caroline knows I've been in a very German mood today. I've shown all 4 words in German that I know today. I'll spare you the others. But the brick and mortar store. What is the role of the brick and mortar store in 2026, 2027, 2028? I've spoken to folks in law enforcement. We did this on previous podcasts here, where they envision a future of cardboard stores, very similar to the Wild Wild West general store, where if you want to buy something, you got to go in, you speak to somebody at the desk, and then they ring your card, or then they run you through the fraud check, and then they go in the back and bring everything out to you. That's something to think about, especially as a lot of, Jessica talks a lot about, the physical store component with the in-person. How does that change? What does that change look like, and how does that change affect our day-to-day? We also talked about, through Jessica, embracing the bot a little bit, our empathy and our kind of problem solving and prevention and all of the myriad of cognitive asks that are dropped on us every day to put ourselves in the shoes of a good buyer and put ourselves in the shoe of a fraudster. We're gonna have to put ourselves in the shoes of the bots. In many ways, we're gonna have to use the bots to combat the bots. We're gonna use the bots to vet the bots. We're using the bots to be us in some ways. Heesh. And then we talk about biometric authentication. A lot of this stuff I've just heard from the group rings true to this, right? We're getting tired of being ripped off. And we're so curious as artists in many ways to visualize the invisible. What better way to make the invisible visible than to get something that is hard to replicate? Not impossible to replicate, but difficult to replicate. I'm thinking biometrics. I'm thinking signals from wearable devices. I'm thinking about fingerprint scans, retina scans, things that sound a little Jetsons. But then when we think about where we're at today versus 2 weeks ago, it seems all the more realistic. Then I think about this, my friends. What does this picture do to you? Ouroboros, we were just talking about this, in embracing the bot, in preparing ourselves for a world where we have much clearer identification of who's doing business with us, in removing physically some avenues for us to be defrauded. Are we chasing progress and then in turns eating ourselves? Are there fraud analysts? Are there loss prevention analysts in the next turn of all of this. How do you feel about yourself? What is it that perhaps keeps you up at night or encourages you in terms of the future? Matthew, I'd love to hear from you.
So I think this is very interesting, but I was at a conference last week where a lot of the conversations was all about AI and its impact in what we do, right? So, some of us may be old enough to know that, how things used to be from a training perspective, very human based, and all that. And now you've got AI that is a buzzword. And the thing is that AI is being promoted as a streamlining process to move things faster, to make decisions faster, and et cetera, et cetera. And to your pictures that you were just showing, to some degree, one would say AI is kind of replacing the investigative human element, right? But what we know though is that AI is not, it's only as good as the data that gets fed to it, right? So it's if it's got dirty data or biased data, it's going to create biased results. So one thing that I think I wrestle with in today's world is that same type of scenario of, we create a tool like an AI that maybe supplants where we are today as investigators. And then do we find out later that we've leaned too heavily on something? And as a result, we've compromised our customers, we've compromised our data integrity retention rates and all those types of things, because we've tried to sell our soul to expedite and instead of actually being thorough and quality based. So that's one thing I think of when I see those images you showed there is that, how do you find that hybrid? I think a hybrid's the answer. I think somehow or another, but how do you find that? And then when you made your 3 comments, the 3 big topics, my immediate thought was, I love all of those, but now I've got to show a business case ROI. So how do I do that? You know what I mean? So those are just my thoughts, Peter.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for your thoughts always. And I was very, very, very vulnerable, I would say, right? Because it's hard to talk about these things a little bit. Are we cleaning the data that will ultimately replace us? But then I think about that pendulum shifting again. When do we get to hybridity? When do we get to that middle ground? There's got to be a hard swing in one direction. Then there's probably going to be a consumer reaction where I want the humans again. I want the people. I'm going to prioritize that. At the same time, to eat our tail on that thought, if I want the humans again, I want the real stuff again. That's also going to be a target, right, for what us humans do really well. And that's kind of finding ways to optimize in scare quotes. And I'm trying to I'll put my Ryan hat on here to, glitch a little bit. And the human will always embrace the glitch and go toward the glitch. Ryan, what do you think?
No, I love what you're saying and what Matthew is saying, because it kind of leads me to the whole, like, even today when you call customer support, like think about calling Verizon or AT&T, you always try to push the 0 or whatever button you can to get to the person because you have the greatest chance of getting empathy, understanding, manipulating the scenario to what you want. That AI agentic support line is trained to respond in a very black and white way. So it kind of leads back to, again, the human being is the problem, but also kind of the desired interaction that we all want. You know what I mean?
And that goes to the ROI point that Matthew's making, because maybe if I'm a leader who is thinking a certain way, I say, well, Matthew, simply look how much money we've lost from these humans. Look how much money is being saved with the robots. Like, boom, like you can't wiggle out of that one now. Because when I start talking, when I'm singing heart and soul over here, like you saw in that picture of me in college, that's a very hard position to make from an ROI perspective. But who sings for us, Matthew?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Ryan hit on something maybe deeper than he even meant to when he talked about the human element like that, because there's something that AI can't do, and that's have that empathy that we're talking about. And so to be able to create a line of grace within what we do, that's where AI is going to be black and white. And I think what we're talking about is there's layers to it. It's an onion, right? So, there's going to be times when you need that element of grace, and that's how you operate a business successfully, in my opinion. But then there's also going to be times when you need to drop the hammer. And I think that's where I see it being a hybrid model down the road. Again, we might be talking 5-10 years down the road, 20 years, but I think we're going to have to learn to work with AI, and AI is going to have to learn to work with us. I don't think it's going to be one takes precedence over the other. I just think we've got to work it out and flush it out, because our customers are going to be the ones that are going to either have benefits to it or they're going to have consequences. And we're going to see that in things like attrition rates, or, those types of scenarios where you're losing loyalty-based customers. And so those are just kind of my things. And I think, Ryan, you hit on it pretty heavy when you're wanting to hit a zero to talk to a human being instead of an AI model that's not going to change or deviate or anything. You know what I mean? So those are just some things.
And now you got me thinking maybe it's high time, if we haven't started doing it already. And if anyone's doing it already, I think Matthew might be doing it already. We'd love to hear from you, how you show ROI around grace, how you show that I made a one-time, kind of do right, bending the rules a little, and this led to loyalty. This led to repeat buying. Those are the metrics that might be really, killer in this next turn, as we look at someone who is just dead set on saying, get the humans out. I don't want them on the lines. I don't want them gussying this up. I don't mean to sound so wild, but I guess maybe you saw where I came from. You saw what I was doing in college. I guess it's kind of in my blood here, so I can't really do anything about it. I value this time so much, that. But I value this line of conversation even more, because as much as it's great to come to you with graphs and year over year and that's cool. But these are the conversations, dare I say, that need to be had. I want to read real quick before we leave here. Jessica's got a great point. I think we as humans can find the glitch and have that knowledge and understanding of our customer and how they should be treated. Having that judgment and decision-making based on how people think versus what the data says is very important. But it's all about getting leadership on the same page. My friends, maybe this is what moves us into H2 2025. How do we get leadership on the same page with us? Many of us who have artist souls, most of us, all of us who have artist souls, I would argue, many of us who have had time on the other side of the ball in customer support, many of us who practice this kind of like empathy with our buyers. How do we start putting this in the language of ROI without using ChatGPT? That is your challenge for this 4th of July weekend. I'm so glad you came out to hang out. For all of you who are new here, feel free to reach out, not only to me, but everyone else you've seen. And Jenna will be back next week, so you don't need to have me just barking at you this whole time. Justin, I see you coming off mute.
I was just going to add, tonight we got Clayton Kershaw going for his 3,000th strikeout. So tune in if you get the chance. It may not ever happen again in baseball. This is kind of the way the dynamics and innings pitched and how things work are shifting. So could be fun.
As a Mets fan, I will drop that hat real quick. I tip my hat to the great southpaw Kershaw, who's been in the game for many, many years. If you're in the game and you don't have a robotic arm at this point, for as long as he has, it's true art on the hill. So take a page out of Justin's book, my friends. Enjoy the national pastime. Enjoy this great weekend. And as always, it's a blessing to just be able to be around you. Thank you for the great conversation. We'll do this again. Adios, muchachos. Until next time.